last question.
Thank you so much for giving of your time, talents, and treasure. What advice do you have for future generations regarding Black philanthropy?
For the future generation, I think you have to look
Mm,
back historically, look back familially in your families, look at your neighbors, look at the people in your church, watch what they're doing, and ask questions.
mhm,
And for those of us who are older, we need to share what
mm,
we've done, not to brag or boast about it, because it's not about that. But when African based people are storytellers. We
mhm,
can tell our story, and others will say, wow, I didn't realize. And sometimes, especially if you're on the receiving end, you can tell the story of how someone in the community helped you.
mhm,
uh, and if you're on the giving end, you can also tell the story of how you helped others, but you yourself at one time in your family had been helped. So
mhm.
we're excellent storytellers. Just tell the story, tell it with sincerity and honesty. And I think once you plant the seed, someone else will come along and water it, and we can keep supporting one another, because oftentimes we're the only ones that we can turn to, and someone will do it with love and compassion, undergirded by faith.
Oh,
I got to thinking about there's two areas that have greatly decreased in particularly in the Black community, and that's neighborhood and family.
mhm,
And I would suggest that people start working on those areas. And it's and I'm not necessarily talking about developing an organization,
mhm,
but just, sometimes we avoid our neighbor,
mhm,
and I'm guilty of that sometimes, but we need to reach out and get to know our neighbors. Once we start getting to know our neighbors, that's how the neighborhood starts to develop, because you get to know their kids or their grandkids and their needs. And so we need to start reaching out instead of isolating to ourselves, being afraid to reach out. They're just going to get up my business. No, uh, we need to reach out. We need to reach out in person, not
mhm,
on Facebook, but
mhm,
in person. Um, the other thing is, in looking at your questions, I started evaluating my own giving and what I did in that area, and I started realizing that I don't focus in on. I don't specifically focus in on Black philanthropy.
mhm,
I just is what I do. Usually, within what I do, I make sure I'm benefiting, the Black folks. In one organization that I support, a lot of my donations go to Africa, and I'm focusing in on that. But the donation itself, the purpose itself is supporting the word going out. The children learn about the Lord Jesus Christ.
mhm,
But inside of that, I try and make sure I support Wayne County.
mhm,
So inside of that, I do, but not really focusing on. So I'm going to have to reach out and explore, research Black philanthropy.
mhm,
Organizations that are focusing on it to increase that 2%.
mhm.
That's ooh, you know, that
It
is tiny.
it
I
is.
mean,
Yes.
we're even in the minimal um, surveys with at least 15% of the population.
Yeah.
So that I got to focus in on that so that I can increase that. Somehow or another, you know.
So the advice that I have for future generations of Black philanthropists is to, one, tell your story, to recognize how we give in a variety of ways, to counter the narrative that we are only recipients of philanthropy from folks that, you know, don't look like us and, you know, dress a certain way, and that we all have the ability to be philanthropists and as such to feel the power of doing that. But I do think the story of how we give is important, even though we all want to be humble, because there's such a strong narrative that says otherwise. It's critical that we honor ourselves and celebrate one another and celebrate the diverse and the creative ways that we give, so that all of us can see ourselves in the meaning of philanthropy as love of humankind, and that we are part of the change that we most seek to see in the world.
All right.
My advice is to bring your full self. Don't fall into the trap of believing you have to give out of abundance, or you have to win the lottery, or be a professional athlete or entertainer to be a philanthropist. You can give, and I think of it as bringing your full self. When you think of your mind, how you can research and be analytical and study issues. You bring your hands and all the things your hands can do, from writing a check to, as I mentioned earlier, driving someone to an appointment or lifting someone up, feeding somebody. You can be a philanthropist with, what moves you, what stirs you, what do you love, and be drawn that way. And then just bring your full self based on your own personal experience with philanthropy, being a recipient or observing some opportunity or experience you gained through someone providing that opportunity. Think about that and pay it forward, give back, in bringing your mind, your hands, your heart, and your full self of who you are.
All right. So I just want to thank all of our interviewees for their time as they shared their thoughts. So, do you have a better understanding of what Black philanthropy means?
You talking to me or the public? Because some of my friends, we're in the Slingshot 3-wheel car club, and they often ask me, and I still didn't know once they heard about this. So I want to say, yeah, we understand a lot more than we did prior to learning this video from you.
All right. So I think the easiest way to try to remember it is really, you can give not just of money, and philanthropy really isn't about the size of the donation. It's about giving what you have. And sometimes what you have, a treasure may not necessarily be financial. It could be the things that you own. Well, I would say most of us have clothes we don't wear, things that we don't use anymore. That could be a blessing to someone else. It could be our time. And so whether that's volunteering, whether it's tutoring, mentoring, and sometimes it's just sitting with somebody so that they know they're not alone, or it's what talents you have. And so whether that's what you may do paid professionally, utilizing those services at a church, at a nonprofit, in your community to benefit others. So really, all of us have the potential to be philanthropists. So saying that, next, what we want to do is we want to recognize our 2023 Black Philanthropist Recipients. So the first one is Dolores Dock, who really this event was the catalyst for. And so we've talked a little bit about her, but in case you don't know, she was my mom. And thank you. I just want to just briefly say, really, Rick's Market wouldn't exist without her. It was just all she did throughout my life. The importance of healthy food on a budget when we didn't have money, and she would grow things in her backyard to make sure we had access to fresh, healthy food, or just her life. She did so much for others. And as I mentioned, I think she touched on every wedge on that wheel when you look at what Black philanthropy looks like. And so even though she's gone on, her legacy still lives. And so you want to add anything?
No, I mean, you pretty much hit the head on the nail with it. I remember her being like that also. I also remember her, she was the first one to try to talk me into buying a Hellcat. And we were going to get a lime green Road Runner. And I was naming it Dolores. So now I know, she was but she used to ride around in my 5.0 to top off. She'd be in the car with me, didn't mind me banging the sounds, and she was just a lovely lady. So yeah, I pretty much know that.
All
And I
right.
was waiting too. She's
All
like,
right.
"You got something else to say?"
So the next person who this is also a postmortem award is my Aunt Jeanette. And so I mentioned her and my mom. They were sisters together earlier, but unfortunately Jeanette passed away this year.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry to hear that.
yeah, and so but just when I think about Black philanthropy, my aunt was really the one in the family. If you had a need, whether it was financial, a place to stay, somebody to talk to, advice to get, she was the one, and she had a hard shell. She was a retired police lieutenant from the Boston Police Department. But so she could come
Okay.
off when you first met her as kind of hard, but a heart of gold. And she would definitely give her last to help out anybody. And so she did so much to help us financially as an organization, but also as a mentor, giving advice because she owned, different businesses and connections as well. So we definitely want to thank Jeanette Atterbury.
Yes, I remember her. I believe at one point she came up to see my mom or something, and she was real. She was just like I don't know, but she had a camera, and she kept saying she was trying to get the batteries for the camera, and she was going all over the different malls and everything, and come to find out, all she had to do was plug the camera up so it can recharge. She was just like, so I told her we might have to go back and look at some of them tickets she wrote. Now you just like, what? So yeah, I remember her for that, and she was a lovely lady also. Yeah, that is, my fondest memory, I believe.
Oh, all right. Our next recipient is Charles Thomas, and thank you so much, Charles, for your words of wisdom you showed during the interview. He is the director of Knight Foundation in Charlotte, their Charlotte office, and he does so much for the community. But I met Charles really when I was first starting Rick's Market, and he worked for Queen City Ford, I believe, was the organization. And he was so instrumental in really connecting me to the food scene, especially the nonprofit scene in Charlotte. And he continues to, look out and as he comes across things to try to see, how he can connect me. And so I just want to thank Charles for all of his hard work, not just for Rick's, but what he does for the city of Charlotte. Thank you, Charles. The next person is Cynthia Tolliver, and Cynthia is pictured here with her daughter Ashley, both wonderful women, and we've known them since Ashley was born. And so my mom used to babysit Ashley, and I think that goes back to that whole kinship. And so really, even though we're not blood related, Cynthia has always been a part of our family, going back, for decades now. And so, but Cynthia just has a heart of gold. And when you talk about, fellowship and faith giving, she is so involved in her church, but she's also been a wonderful sponsor to Rick's Market. And so, one of the things I always say, if you don't have money, we do accept prayers. And I know that Cynthia is someone who has prayed for us. Thank you, Cynthia. Our next recipient is Ebony Bailey. And I don't know Ebony Bailey. I did have a chance to talk with her briefly, but she was nominated by one of our board members for the work she does at The Bulb. And The Bulb is another nonprofit in Charlotte that works with rescue food and making sure that people have access to fresh, healthy food. So I just want to thank you, Ebony, for all you do. Our next recipient is Reverend Sandra Caldwell Williams. You saw her in our interviews as well. And just an amazing woman. We do attend church together, and she is the director of Christian education for a large church with a lot of members. And so she's just been wonderful in making sure that children all the way up through adults, have what they need to learn more about Jesus Christ. And so, but as far as a person who has helped Rick's Market personally, she is definitely giving up her time, her talents, and her treasures. So I want to thank Reverend Sandra Caldwell Williams. And our next recipient is Valeda Fullwood, and she also was in our interviews. And Valeda, really, I think of her as the reason we have Charlotte Gives Black, and has been so instrumental in Black Philanthropy Month in Charlotte, and also in GAP, which is a giving circle. And I've had the fortune to join this year, so I'm a new member, but I'm just so impressed by what she does for not only for our organization, but for all of the Black-led, Black benefiting organizations in Charlotte. So thank you so much, Ms. Fullwood. And our last recipient is Yvonne Clark. And so once again, Yvonne has been my Aunt B as long as I can remember. And even though she's not my biological aunt, she has been friends with my mom forever. And so she has been, like I said earlier, like a mom to me. And so she has been one of the largest financial donors to Rick's Market. And then not just with her finances, but also her experiences as serving as a board member for another organization, to advice, to also her prayers. And so I just want to thank all of our 2023 Black Philanthropy recipients.